Okay, so let's get started on our first Python tutorial ever on this channel. For those that are brand new to Python and coding in general, you're often going to see this hash or pound sign. And by the way, don't refer to it as a hashtag. This is not Instagram or Facebook. This is not a hashtag. It's a hash or pound sign. And in Python, the hash symbol is used to denote a comment. So anything following the hash on a line is ignored by the Python interpreter. So this is basically a post-it note where you can leave a comment, and the comments are used to make the code more readable and to explain what certain parts of the code are doing. And although this can be really helpful to yourself to just leave notes like that, it's also extremely helpful when you're working on a project with other developers. And those other developers sometimes need to communicate or leave a note, and that could be done with a hash or pound sign followed by the comment that you want to leave. So what we're going to be covering today is string types. Very simply, a string is a sequence of characters. It's used to represent information as text type information. It could be a word, a phrase, a paragraph, an acronym. Now, because a lot of advanced people are definitely going to watch this tutorial and rip it apart, I should mention that there are two types of strings in Python. One is str, which we will be discussing today. That's the sequence of characters, that's text like someone's name or a paragraph or a poem. But there are also bytes, which are sequences of bytes. So that's 8-bit values. They're not characters or textual data like we just covered about str. They're more so used for binary data, like data read from a file in binary mode or data transmitted over network, but this is all stuff that we'll cover in future videos. Right now, we're just going to focus on simple textual-based strings. And if you're not familiar with what you're staring at here, this is PyCharm. PyCharm is an IDE, it's an integrated development environment, and it's what we'll be using because it's really simple to see side by side. So here I will be writing some code, and then I'll be clicking on run, and in the terminal, you're gonna see what it outputs here. Sometimes I'm gonna drag it over to the left, sometimes to the right. If you're not familiar with PyCharm, don't worry, there will be plenty of tutorials on it on my channel. In the meantime, I just want you to know what the heck is going on here because it could look intimidating, especially if you're brand new to Python. Now in Python, we have something called functions. And functions in Python, they're simply a way to organize and reuse code. So they're code inside a function that performs a specific task. This code is executed when the function is called. At its simplest, the print function in Python is a built-in function that outputs data to the console. So it's really commonly used for displaying information to the user, debugging, logging. Here's a really simple command that we could give it. So if we do print open parentheses, and then we put in quotation marks, let's say the name Angie. Now this is really important in the print function. If you have an open parentheses and then a quotation mark, you have to end it with the same type of quotation mark and then a closed parentheses. And then if I run this program right here, you'll see that it printed out the word Angie. This is really cool, and these right here are called double quotation marks, but there's also single quotation marks, and those look like this. And either one produces the same exact thing. So if we go ahead and we clear this out and then we run this program again, you will see that both the single and double quotation marks produce Angie. So what is the point of that? Well, there is a really helpful way to use these different quotation marks. So for instance, if we wanted to actually type out Angie's cat Diego, and keep in mind here that this is an apostrophe right here, and the apostrophe is the same exact symbol on the keyboard as the single quotation mark. So spoiler alert, there might be trouble ahead. And then if we go ahead and run that, you will see that there's been a major error. The error occurred because the print function thinks that the string ends right here because it was an open parentheses, single quotation mark, Angie, apostrophe. It thought that the string ended. So it does not understand what all this mumbo jumbo is afterwards. So the way to correct that is actually two ways. The first way we can do it is we can use double quotation marks and then put in Angie's cat Diego, and then we could use the close quotation marks to go ahead and let the function know that this is the text that we want to print, including this parentheses right here. And you'll see that now if I clear this out and run it again, it in fact runs it correctly. Angie's cat Diego. And having both single quotes and double quotes identically behaving is helpful, because if you use one kind of quote inside of a string that has the other type of quote, then there is no need to escape anything. What do I mean by escape anything? Well, there's another way that we can achieve this. So remember the first time when we were just using single quotation marks, we were running into an issue when we tried doing something like this, like single quotation mark and then Angie apostrophe as it thought it finished. What we can do here is we can actually use a backslash. A backslash is actually really helpful because we can escape out of this quotation mark. And now the function no longer thinks that this is the end of the script, but it thinks that the end of the script is here. And that is very, very helpful, because now if we go ahead and we run this, we will see that it actually runs correctly. Angie's cat Diego. Now, this can look a little bit off, and you want to keep your code clean. So that is why the preferred way of doing it is most likely just using the double quotation marks on one side and double quotation marks on the other side. And again, to show you, if I run that, Angie's cat Diego runs correctly. Okay, so I showed you how to escape with a backslash. Now let's talk about the backslash. What if Angie's cat was actually named Diego backslash? What would happen if we tried to run this? Well, as you can see, it's actually telling us that there's a syntax error and we can't run it. So if we actually want to include a backslash and print it, we would have to include 2 backslashes, because then you are escaping out of this syntax situation. And now if we go ahead and run it, you will see that we're actually going to see Angie apostrophe S cat Diego with a backslash. So let's take a look. And right here you can see that it in fact did Angie's cat Diego with a backslash. Here's another cool thing that we could do with a backslash. Maybe we want these 2 statements, Angie's cat Diego, Diego is a tabby, to be split into 2 lines of code here. But when we run it, we actually want it to appear as one. We can actually achieve that with a backslash. And then if we throw Diego as a tabby on the second line, it's not going to matter, because with this backslash, we're saying escape and treat this when you run it as one single line. So let's take a look here. If we go ahead and run it, you will see that in fact it's showing us that it is 1 line of code. Now if we wanted it to be 2 lines of code, we can simply do \n, and then we can go ahead and run it. And what this is going to do is embed a brand new line. So this means a break and a new line. So let's go ahead and clear this and run it, and let's see what we got. Angie's cat Diego, Diego is a tabby. I should include a period here at the end of tabby, which I did right now. So again, let's clear it, let's run it. And now we see it's 2 separate lines. Angie's cat Diego, Diego is a tabby. So now we learned how to create just 1 line of code, but when it's ran, to have it show as 2 lines. And then I also showed you how to code 2 lines right here, but when the program is ran, to have it appear as just 1 line. However, if you're going to have a lot of statements here, or you're writing a poem, or you need a lot of things on different lines, the best practice way of doing it is actually not with a \n, it is with triple quotes. So if we include triple quotes right here, what we can do is we can actually bring this part as a brand new line, and we could continue to do that. We can write the tabby loves Angie. And then I could create yet another line and say, Angie loves her cat unconditionally. But I do have to remember that because we had print, open parentheses, and 3 quotation marks, we have to end it with 3 quotation marks as well. So now if I go ahead, I clear that out, and I run the program, you will see that it says Angie's cat Diego, Diego's a tabby, the tabby loves Angie, Angie loves her cat unconditionally. And I keep leaving out the period, so let me add that right here. And now you see that, again, if I clear it out and I run it, we see 4 lines as we have right here. Now remember I told you that double quotation marks, but also single quotation marks act the same? Let's go ahead and test that out. So if I include 3 single quotation marks and at the end also put 3 single quotation marks, we should get the same thing. So again, let me delete this program that ran over here and let me run it once again. And you will see that it in fact has it as 4 separate lines of code, and it's showing up exactly as I hoped it would. So now I'm going to show you some really cool things that you could do with strings using functions in Python. But before we do that, Angie's cat Diego actually caught wind of me using him in my videos, and the agent reached out. He was kind of frustrated. He said, listen, if you're going to use Diego in your videos, you have to request that people in the comments section virtually pet him or give him a little tickle under the chin. So if you guys can do that for me, I'd super appreciate it. And Mr. Diego would as well. So moving right along, the len function in Python. What does it do? Well, we have a sentence here. Angie's cat Diego is a cute little fella. So what I want to do is I want to find out how many characters does this sentence contain. We can actually easily do that with the len function in Python, which can be applied to actually other types of data as well, like tuples, dictionaries, and other iterable collections, but we'll cover that in a separate video. For now, all you need to know about len is that it can determine the length of an object. And this object is obviously a string, it's in quotation marks, so we could do something like this, where we open up the len function, open parentheses, let's not forget the closed parentheses. And now let's see what happens when we go ahead and run it. So we'll click on run. Now, as you can see, absolutely nothing happened. And that's so strange because I have it in parentheses, I'm using the len function, but nothing happened. The reason is because we didn't instruct it to actually go ahead and print this. So we have to do that. We have to instruct it to print it. And now if we go ahead and run it, we can see that it says 41. So I'm going to go ahead and count these out and make sure it's correct. And it is in fact correct. It's 41 characters within this line. Now, another way that we could achieve this is we could turn this string into a variable, and then we could just ask to print the len function and pass the variable through it. So let me show you how to do that. Here we can make the variable cat underscore sentence equals, and you will see that this right here is a variable. Now, why is there an underscore here? If you are reading through code, you'll notice this a lot. The reason is because it's really hard to read this. Like, this might read as like cat sentence, but if you put an underscore here, it's really easy to read. It's cat sentence. And obviously you can't leave it like this. That really wouldn't work. And so use underscores instead of spaces when you are trying to define a variable. So right here, we're going to say cat underscore sentence equals, and this string right here. And now what I could do is use the len function, and inside of it, I could just use this variable. And right here, the program is so smart. PyCharm is actually providing us this. So all I have to do is double click it, and it's already in there. And now, obviously, if we go ahead and run this, it really didn't do anything. Why? Because again, we're not telling it to print anything. We want to print out the length of this string object right here. So what do? Again, we go print, and then we just put it within the parentheses. And now if we run it, we get 41. Now let me show you how you can write an interesting program based on everything that we learned just now. So take a look at this. I want to write a program where regardless how I change the sentence, it's going to output and tell me how many characters there are, and then it's going to provide me with the sentence as well. Let me show you what I mean. So what I can do here is I can instruct it to use the print function to go ahead and print out the length of the variable cat sentence. And here I could just double click, it fills it in for me. And then aside from that, aside from just giving me the length, I actually wanted to say this. I'm going to say in quotation marks, print out, there are, and then we're going to leave a space and then quotation marks. And then we're going to add this. So there are 41. So this should output 41 plus in quotation marks, we're going to use another space. So to leave a space before the 41 and then after the 41. So there are 41 characters in the sentence, ... We're going to leave a space. And then here, instead of writing out this entire sentence, we are just going to use this right here, cat underscore sentence, the variable. So here, we're going to say plus cat underscore sentence. And now we have to close our parentheses. Now let's see if this works right here. So if we go ahead and we run this program, you're going to see that it actually did not run. It said that there is an error. It says here that you can only concatenate str, not int, to str. What does that mean? Well, we'll get to this later, but basically it's treating something as a number here, as an integer. So that len function, so this part right here, what it did, this length of cat sentence, when it told us it's 41, it's treating that as an integer, and it cannot concatenate it with a string. And so what we can do here is we can actually turn this length of the cat sentence into a string rather than an integer. How do we do that? We can pass it through str and then enclose it in the parentheses. And what you'll see that that's going to do is now if we go ahead and we run the program, you will see that now it says there are 41 characters in the sentence. Angie's cat Diego is a cute little fella. Now here's a really neat thing. I can now go ahead and I can modify this sentence to whatever I want. I could say we're learning Python, and then if I run this, you will see that it actually went ahead and said there are 22 characters in the sentence, we're learning Python. And this is pretty amazing. So this is how some of those programs are created when you type something out and it's telling you how many characters are there. So for instance, you could write something like subscribe to Promo Ambitions channel. And then if we go ahead and run it, you will see that no matter what we change it to, it says how many characters are in the sentence. So now that we covered that, let me show you some other really cool things that you could do with strings. So I've mentioned assigning variables earlier in this video, but just to refresh, here is the letter F for first name, M for middle name, L is gonna symbolize the last name. And what I'm doing is I'm actually assigning a value to this variable. So basically, this value, which is a string, now has a name, which is F. And now I could refer to it as such. Let's talk about indexing. Now, very, very simply, you can access a specific character in a string by its position. So this is not just for Python, but for many other languages, the initial character is at index 0. What do I mean? So logically, if you're looking at the word Diego, it has 5 characters. So you would assume that the capital D is indexed as 1, the lowercase I as 2, E as 3, G as 4, and O as 5. But the reality is Python strings are 0 indexed. So the first character is at index 0. So the capital D is actually indexed as 0. The lowercase I is 1, the lowercase e is 2, the lowercase g is 3, and the lowercase o as 4. Now we can actually fetch this with indexing expressions. So what I can do here is I could summon the print function, and then I can instruct it to go ahead and fetch the character based on the index that I am pinpointing here. So watch what I mean. I can write print f, and then in square brackets, we dictate which index we want to put in. So we're going to put in the number 2, and that should, if I run the program, go ahead and print the letter E. Let's see if I'm right. And over here, you see that when we ran it, it actually printed the letter E. And again, if I change this to 0, you're going to see that it's going to be capital D. So if I go and run it, you'll see that that's D. And just to see that I'm not talking dribble, if you change this to 1, it's not going to print the capital D. It'll print the lowercase I. So if I run that, now we see the lowercase I. Now here's something important to note. So these numbers right here, you can think of it as forward indexing because it's going from left to right. However, there's also a way to index from right to left. Let me show you what I mean. So this O over here, not only is it represented by 4, but it can also be represented by -1. So take a look at this. We can actually go -1 is O, -2 is G, -3 is E, -4 is I, and -5 is capital D. I know it's confusing, but all you have to remember is that you can index backwards. You just have to go right to left in the string. So watch, if I instruct the print function to go ahead and show us what's indexed at position -1, you will see that if I run it, it says O. And if you want to see if that's accurate or not, we can actually use the comparison operator equals to, which checks if the values of two operands are equal. So what it means is if you use these two equal signs and something else is equal to it, it is going to go ahead and show it. So let me show you exactly what I mean. If I write 4 equals 4, it's going to say whether that's true or false. So if I run it, it says true. If I say 4 equals 5 and I run that, it's going to say false. So this is a way that we can check if something actually is identical. So take a look here. I said that if we look at the variable f, in the -1 position is the letter O. So I'm going to see if that's actually true. If f of index -1 is going to be equal to f of index 4, which represented the O. That's going left to right. So let's see if I'm correct. So here I set the equals to be the variable f at position -1, which should be O, and the variable f at position 4, which should be O as well. Remember? Right here. Check it out. So that should be the lowercase o. So if we run this, you'll see that it's actually true. And you can actually check this about several things that I mentioned in this video. For instance, I remember saying that if you use quotation marks and you say something with double quotation marks, that same string, if you use single quotation marks, means the same thing. So let's see if that in fact is true. So if I go and run this, you'll see that it's true. Also, I believe I mentioned, if I didn't, I want you to know that Python is capital sensitive. So it differentiates between uppercase and lowercase, obviously. So if we take a look here, is this the same thing? A capital Y and a lowercase y, is the value the same? And Python will say it's false. It's not. However, if I change this to an uppercase Y, it'll say it in fact is. So I'm going to round out the video by showing you that a lot of Python strings come with a wide variety of method functions that can be used to manipulate and interact with the string data. So over here, I went and I assigned the variable cat_name to be Diego my ego. Now, if I wanted to capitalize this, what I can do is I can summon the print function, and then inside of the print function, I can simply type in the variable cat_name. And if I press the dot, you will see that we then see a lot of these methods or functions within the string that we can use. So if I go ahead and I find capitalize over here, you will see that if I run it, what the capitalize method does is it capitalizes only the first character in the string. Now, if I wanted all of these capitalized, I can use the title method. So check this out. So over here, I use the title method, and you see that every single first letter of every word is capitalized, versus when I just did the capitalized method, it only capitalized the D. If I want all of it to be capitalized, again, I summon the print function. All I have to do is start typing out cat_name, and PyCharm is smart enough where it will suggest the rest for me. So I just have to double click it. And over here, the same thing. As soon as I put a dot down, it goes ahead and it brings up a lot of these functions and methods that I could use on the strings in order to manipulate them. So here I will select upper, and then if I go ahead and run it, you will see that it's all capitalized over here. If I wanted it to be lower, I can do something very, very similar. I can go ahead, I can once again start typing up the variable. It's going to help me complete it. I put a dot down, and now I scroll down. It's in alphabetical order, and I just find lower. And if I go ahead and I run this program, you'll see that the last line is everything in lowercase. I can even replace certain things. So instead of making it Diego my ego, maybe I want to say Diego your ego wherever the cat underscore name variable is used. So take a look at how I would do that. I would simply summon the print function. I will type in the variable, and then I will type in dot. And again, I'll scroll down until I can find replace, which is right here. And the cool thing about PyCharm is it tells you the exact format that you should use when using the replace function. So here, all I have to do in quotation marks is specify what I am attempting to replace. So I'm going to say instead of my, and then separate it by a comma, and then say your. And over here, it's smart enough to go ahead and fill this in for me, the underscore old, the underscore new. This is so helpful. This is why I really love to use PyCharm. So now let me delete these other print methods, and let me go ahead and run this and see what happens if line 6 works. We should see over here that it's going to say Diego your ego. Let's see if I'm correct. So I went ahead and ran it, and you see that it actually replaced it with Diego your ego. So as you can see, these methods provide a wide range of functionality for working with strings, from basic transformations to really complex formatting and checking string properties. And I think I'm going to end this tutorial right here. If this tutorial gets a lot of views, the next one I will continue with is going to be syntax and structure. We're going to cover variables and data types, integers, floats, strings, booleans. We're going to cover basic operators such as arithmetic, assignment, comparison, logical operators. And my goal here is really to make this content very digestible. So if anything in this video was not very easy to understand, please mention it in the comment section. It's going to do me a lot of favors as far as how I create future tutorials in Python. I appreciate you all for watching this video in its entirety, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.